Hello, everyone, and welcome to Citizens Conversations. I'm your host, Ron Booth. We plan to have a candid conversation with a candidate for District 3. His name is Mr. Bennie Crane. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that early voting starts this month, October 16th, and it runs through November 3rd. Election day is November 7th, and if you vote early, you probably won't have to stand in line, so keep that in mind. With that, I'd like to introduce the chairperson of Citizens Conversations, Ms. Yoshina Colbert-Bradford. Yoshina?
Thank you, Ron. Good evening, everyone. I'm Yoshina Colbert-Bradford. I'll be your moderator this evening. We're going to go over a few ground rules. And it seems like every night I do something a little different. That's why we're a little bit more relaxed here. It's not as formal as some people have had it to be. But just the first rule, be respectful. That's from the candidate and also the citizens. Number two, Ron has implemented, which I think is great. We just turned off everyone's video. That way the speakers won't have any distraction in the background because we know people are still eating. It's dinner time. We want you to relax, enjoy the conversation, but keep your videos off. Number three, unmute yourself. Just raise your hand. We'll unmute you. That way you can ask any question that you have for the candidate. This is District 3 tonight. We're very excited to have the candidate Bennie Crane, and we thank you all for joining us tonight. And number four, I think we'll always start off. I'm going to introduce the candidate. They'll have 2 minutes to kind of give us an introduction of themselves. Me and Ron will kick off the questions with a few of the same questions we ask all candidates who come on, to be fair. And lastly, that's it. So just relax, enjoy just meeting the candidate and getting to know them. All right, so without further ado, we'll have the candidate, Mr. Bennie Crane. Welcome, 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 and thank you for coming on this evening and allowing the citizens conversation. And we're going to ask you go ahead in the next 2 minutes. Just tell us a little about Bennie Crane.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for putting on this awesome opportunity to come before the citizens of the city of South Fulton. I am Bennie Crane, and I've been a resident of South Fulton for over 4 decades. I moved to South Fulton in 1977. At that time, I was on Godby Road. In 1980, I moved to the Welcome All community. And so I've been here a very, very long time. And I care about the community. Not only do I care about this community, to say District 3, I care about the city of South Fulton. I cared so much for a long time that in 2006, I was the head of the movement to create the city of South Fulton. And as you all know, this effort failed in 2007. And for 6 years, from 2007 until 2013, there was silence in the land. No one had taken on any initiative to rekindle the movement to create the city of South Fulton. I picked up the mantle and I created an organization by the name of South Fulton United. The name was important because I wanted to unite all of our community under one umbrella to become the great city that I thought that we could. So I started the organization, I chaired that organization, and I went to Georgia State University and commissioned them to do a feasibility study. Now that study, we hoped that it would reveal that we would be financially viable should we become a city. Well, that study came back and said just that. And because we had that viability rating, the state legislature passed the legislation for us to have the right to go to the poll and vote for a city. And so we did. So I care about this community. I care about this city. And why am I running now? Because though we have a new city, we have work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And I believe that I present the better opportunity for the citizens of the 3rd district of the city of South Fulton to have a leader that will be civil, professional, humble, and have a sense of decorum, which is woefully missing from the equation today. So I want to bring that to the table. And I look forward to entertaining all the questions that you may have so that you can fully vet me in a calm, cool manner so that on October 6th, with early voting all the way through November 7th, you can have an informed make an informed decision to vote for the next city councilman for the District 3 in the city of South Fulton. I look forward to entertaining your questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. And Ron, go ahead. I know you always start us off with the first question. We'll get rolling.
Okay, Mr. Crane. The first question I'd like to ask is, name 2 things that you love about City of South Fulton and 2 things that you don't care so much about in the City of South Fulton.
Well, listen, just start off. I love the name, the City of South Fulton, because it was birthed out of the fact that no matter where you live south by 20, you were part of the family. Now, some of those people, quite frankly, live in an existing city, whether it was Hateville, Palmetto, Fairburn, Union City. No matter where you live, we all embrace the fact that we were in South Fulton. So we were very fortunate that we were able to use that name to become the City of South Fulton. Though we don't know if it's going to stay the City of South Fulton. Of course, the City of Atlanta hasn't always been the City of Atlanta. If you know your history, like I'm sure you do, the last name that it had before it was City of Atlanta, it was Marthasville. And nobody saw Atlanta coming, but here we are, all of these years later, we have the City of Atlanta. So I love the fact that we have this new city, one of the largest cities in the state of Georgia, the 2nd or 3rd largest in the county, over 100,000 citizens strong. We have the opportunity to be truly one of the best in class new cities ever created. So I love that about our city. The thing that there are things we need to work on, obviously. We need to work on it being a safer place to live, work, and play. And with Bennie Crane on the city council, I will make sure that our police force is properly funded so that we can roll out the kinds of plans and programs that would abate the crime in our community, no matter whether it's Old National or Sandtown or Cliftondale or Cedar Grove. It doesn't matter. I take a global approach to this city because remember, I loved the city. I just happen to be running for the city council seat now, but whatever happens at Old National affects greater Welcome All community. Whatever happens in Cedar Grove affects us. Whatever happens in Welcome All affects every part of our city. So I care about the things we must get done, whether that's fighting crime, providing programming for our youth, or having a robust economic development plan. We have work to do, and my sleeves are rolled up, ready to get to work.
All right, thank you for that answer. And just as a reminder, go ahead and start raising your hands. It's your citizens conversation. It's up to you to ask the candidate the questions. Now, I would like to ask you a question. We've asked every candidate. How do you feel that the waste program for the city of South Fulton, how did you like the rollout? Was it a good rollout, or were there things that you would have changed?
Well, listen, I advocated for a citywide waste program from day one, even before day one. That was one of the core services that I thought we ought to sign up for. It didn't happen in the first 7 years, but I'm glad it happened now. But there were some critical errors made. Number one, there should have been more collaboration with the people. Number two, there should have been more collaboration with the tax commissioner. I would have had a conversation on the front end with the county tax commission to ask the question, in as much as people have been paying for private sanitation for decades now, and they pay those bills on a quarterly basis, is there any way that you can bill on a quarterly basis? So the only thing that would materially change would be the hauler and not the way that they were paying the bill. So we should have had that conversation. Number three, we should have made sure that we understood what the implications would be with the tax commissioner being the sole source collector. Would your mortgage company get injected into this? Because they don't have to send your mortgage company a bill. The mortgage companies kind of troll the tax commissioner's role to see what tax bills are out there. Now, they don't draw a distinction between whether it's a property tax bill or a sanitation tax bill. If it's coming out of the tax commissioner's office, it's perceived to be a tax bill. So they picked it up and ran with it. So we should have that conversation, but probably as important or more important, not to put too fine a point on this, we shouldn't have even commissioned the tax commissioner to do this. We should have done like most cities across the region have done. They took care of this through public works. We should have stood up a group of employees in the public works department, complete with the billing mechanism, and that should have been handled internally. It never should have been paid for outside with the tax commissioner, because inherently there were going to be challenges. But I'm glad we have it, but we got work to do.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now rolling into, I know we've finished with waste. Now let's get a little bit into real estate. With City of South Fulton and some of the areas, and I will consider myself, I live in Southwest Atlanta. I say I'm the 15-minute person, as you probably have heard that. 15 minutes from the airport, 15 minutes from downtown, 15 minutes from a little bit of everything. Being in such a prominent area, and even like Old National, such a prominent area, being close to the busiest national airport or international airport, what do you feel about our home values? Do you think they have the decisions we've made, have they increased our values? How can we protect to make sure that our home values continue to increase like they do on the north side?
Well, listen, we got to recognize the fact that our property values are suppressed by the suppressor. Many real estate appraisers have been part and parcel, in part, the blame for our suppressed value. Because if it's owned by a person of color, it is perceived to have less value. That's even demonstrated the way we market our properties. If you're going to market your property in a predominantly Black or brown community, you better whitewash it. You better take all the photos off the wall. Okay, that's unfortunate that we have to do that in our community to sell the property. In the majority communities, they don't whitewash their property. They don't take their family portraits off the wall. So that's a systemic problem that we have had for a long time, and it's bigger than South Fulton. But what can we do to increase or maintain our values? We can get the crime rate down, because people want to live where they feel safe, number one. Number two, we can work with our our public school system to make sure we assist them in every way possible, even though that's a separate government. But we've got to assist them in every way possible, like creating after-school programs in our parks to help our kids with homework assistance so that we can raise the outcomes that we're getting out of our schools. Because people, when they are thoughtful about where they want to purchase a home, two things they're going to look at first. They're going to look at the crime statistics, and they're going to look at the academic educational outcomes. Those are the areas that we need to work on if we want to fix our real estate value problem. Now, here's the thing in fixing the real estate value problem. When you unleash our community, where we can see our values growing, well, that's going to have an impact on your property taxes. So we have to be prepared for that, most especially in light of the fact that our current city council have not been too amenable to rolling back the millage rate, which would keep our property tax bill down. Two things affect, generate the tax bill: property value and millage rate. When the property value goes up, you have to lower the millage rate in order for there to be a revenue neutral millage rate year over year, unless there are some special things, unforeseen or otherwise, that we need to do to raise money. So those are the things that I believe we can do to help stem or spur increased value like we see on the north side, or even the south side. If you go south of Fulton County, property values are skyrocketing, because crime rate, education outcomes are different than we see in our communities.
Absolutely. We have a question from the citizens. Looks like Mr. Snellings.
Thank you so much. One of the expectations I have of the city council as a whole is to have 7 independent thinkers with critical thinking ability to assess each action on its own merits. What commitments are you willing to make here tonight to meet the expectation of complete independence in your decision-making, as to not appear to be part of a clique? on the council?
Great question, Mr. Snell, and thank you for that. Well, let me tell you something. For the better part of 50 years, well, it's over 50 years now, I started working with the first political campaign I worked with was in the city of Atlanta with the Reverend Hosea Williams. He was running as a write-in candidate in the 76th House District in Kirkwood in Atlanta, the area that I live. He had a slogan then, and I live by it to this day. I'm unbought and unbossed. So I don't owe anybody any political favors, no matter whether you have supported me down through the years or not. This was not a pay to play or payola. I'm an independent thinker. And I believe that even the person that we may despise most may come up with a good idea worthy of consideration at any given time. So my commitment is this: I'm going to be Bennie Crane, that guy that I've always been, to be an independent thinker. That's how I got to be a successful businessman for nearly 50 years now. I wasn't looking for clicks or likes. I was looking for opportunities to do the most good for the most people. So I'll continue to do that, no matter what your political stripes are. If you have a good idea that's worthy of my consideration, that's going to do the most good for the most people, only thing I can say to you, Mr. Sneller, you have my word. I'm going to be Bennie Crane. I was built for this, and that's what I would do if I'm fortunate on November 1st to be the next city councilman for the 3rd district of the city of South Fulton.
Absolutely. Let me go to Ron real quick, and then we'll go back to Mr. Stellings.
Okay,
Ron?
and Mr. Crane, during your introduction, you mentioned the word decorum, which is very important to me. And my understanding is the city in its charter has some sort of decorum ordinance. I've seen it violated many times, including some hot mic moments with profanity being used by a sitting city council person. If you're elected to District 3 and to represent them and everyone in that district, how will you conduct yourself, number one? And then number two, how will you handle things like I described, when things get unruly and have discourse and there's no decorum as part of a meeting? And keep in mind that these YouTube videos of every city council session, they're going to be around for a long time. And I personally don't like people laughing and grinning and pointing at our city, not to mention the news media, but the city council meeting itself. How will you conduct yourself in those meetings?
Well, let me tell you this, we all saw that hot mic situation. And let me tell you, for me, you can leave the mics on at all times, knowingly or unknowingly, because I'm not going to sit there disrespecting my colleague nor anyone else while they are yet speaking to the public, talking about, this BS. That's egregious. But let me tell you what I stand for. There are 3 major planks in my platform. That's economic development, safe communities, and ethics reform. And that's why I've taken the South Fulton United Pledge. And it simply says this: I will not interfere with the city manager's duties. I will not bully city personnel nor my colleagues. I will perform my duties with professionalism. I will put the city's interests above that of my own, and I will seek common ground through diplomacy. This is not a stretch for me. This is what I do, and that's my commitment. And you're right, that there are some guidelines or standards in place, but they have no teeth. That's why I'm running on ethics reform. I want to be the person that rally the troops, those people on the city council, and have some common sense ethics guidelines, guardrails with consequences. People are doing what they're doing because for 6 years, there have been no consequences for bad actors. So that's what I bring to the table. That's the commitment that I make, to conduct myself in a professional manner. Listen, I've been in a highly regulated industry for over 40 years. So I can't do that in the face of my profession. I can't do that in the face of my family. I can't act crazy in the face of my God. And I owe the citizens of this district better than that. So that's my commitment. You're going to get the best out of me. In a word, let me tell you something, Mr. Ron. If I'm elected to the city council or the 3rd district, not only will I not embarrass you with that kind of behavior, I'll make you proud.
Thank you so much, Mr. Crane. Mr. Snellings, you have another question? And for anyone else, if you don't want to raise your hand, you're more than welcome to put it in a chat and we'll read your question out loud. Thank you.
Ron actually took my question, but thank you.
Okay. All right, since we, thank you so much. Mr. Crane has been on it. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and ask a few more questions and I wrote one down. You mentioned ethics and I'm glad that you did. I know we have an ethics committee in City of South Fulton, which sometimes have come off as a joke, I'll be honest. There's no accountability for a lot of the cases that have been brought forth to the ethics committee. So what are your thoughts on the ethics committee that we have currently and how would you restructure that?
I'm glad you asked that question. About a year ago to this day, I sat on the City of South Fulton Charter Review Committee. This was impaneled by charter that at the 5th anniversary, we had to seat appointed individuals appointed by the city, appointed by each city council person for us to get together and review the charter from cover to cover. And if you look back at all the video, one of the things that I advocated for most fervently was that of reforming the ethics board. The ethics board right now is made up of only attorneys who have a significant number of years in civil law. Well, what came out of the charter review is that we needed to reconstitute that because it's not lawyers, it's not just lawyers who practice civil law that can understand complex matters or know what bad behavior is when they see it. So as a result of that current construct for a long time, well, let me say it this way, until maybe a month or two ago, not one single ethics case had been heard because the ethics board was not fully staffed with enough lawyers. They still have at least one vacancy. So we need to make sure we reconstitute that body to make sure it's made up of private citizens as well as attorneys so that we can hear these cases. There are people who have filed cases months and months and months and months ago whose cases have languished. Now, here's what we have to do. We have to hold the city clerk responsible and accountable for moving those cases forward. They don't move at the whim of anybody else. It's the city clerk. Now, he may be marching to the dictates of the 7, 8 bosses that he must answer to. Well, I'm talking about the city council, even though he's supposed to be working for the citizen. He needs to move those cases forward. But here's what I would do. I will make sure I go back to the state legislature, as I have already done. I've talked to several of them and past state legislators, because it was a past state legislator who led the charge to reconstitute the ethics board to include all attorneys. So I wanted to talk to that person to see what was their rationale behind doing that. But they agree with the charter review that needs to be changed because we were in a different space and time when they did that. We need to fix it. So that's what I want to do. I want to fix the ethics board. I want to clear out those cases, not throw them out. I want those cases to be heard and properly adjudicated so people can get the justice that they deserve. People need to know that if they file a harassment case for, hostile work environment, bullying, or whatever the case may be, they need to know that they won't be subject to retaliation and that their case will be properly adjudicated. We owe that to the employees of this city. We owe that to the citizens of this city. And with Bennie Crane at the helm, at the city councilman from District 3, you better be sure that if these things don't happen, it won't be for the lack of my effort. I'll make sure that these things happen because we deserve that.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a question posed by Jill Lindsay. If you can unmute yourself and ask your question. And just to piggyback on what you said with the ethics board, it doesn't necessarily have to be attorneys. They need to have an attorney on to sit with them when they have meetings, but it would be nice if citizens could be a part of the ethics to hold the city council responsible.
I
Is
agree
Jill-
completely.
Is Jill Lindsay available?
Yes, I'm here,
Oh.
guys. How are you all?
Great, how are you? Go ahead with your question.
Okay, Mr. Crane, I have a question. I've been recently attending the economic development meetings here off at the on Old National at the new economic development office. And I guess it was not this meeting this week, but the last meeting, they had the entire council there. They had the city manager, the lawyer of the city there. And I want to know, how do you feel about the council and involved in real estate?
Well,
Far as you know, have like the people that are coming in, the developers are calling council, and council is involved in it and not the economic development office. I think there's a conflict of interest. So I want to understand your thoughts on that.
well, that's a great question. Thank you for that question, Ms. Lindsay. Listen, when elected officials start having private meetings with developers, that's where they get in trouble. And listen, the reality is the Economic Development Board, they're not on the ballot, and nothing gets approved unless it's approved by the city council, not the economic development team. So I will have meetings with developers, but it will be in full daylight. I will never ever meet with developers by myself. It'll be with perhaps other city council person, staff, or others, so that it will be full transparency. Because again, when people start meeting with developers, bad things happen. And it doesn't always happen, but the appearance of bad things happening. And listen, I come from a school of thought that we have to shun the very appearance of evil, and that has potential corruption all over it. I won't do that. I will meet with them, but I will make sure I do it in full daylight so people can see what we say, what we do. There'll be nothing slid under the table. There'll be no back office deals. It'll be fully transparent. And if the citizens don't want it, I stand with the citizens.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for that question, Ms. Lindsay. And just to kind of piggyback on that, I know we always talk about economic development. How do we do this? I will say this as a citizen. I don't have a problem with the businesses coming. I think it's the way that they're coming. There is no actual vision. No one has a plan that was laid out. It's like we're putting a business here in spurts, and I'm tired of chicken. I don't want to see another Popeyes. But how do we begin to start to develop our area, our neighborhoods with the amenities? And I can say that as an African-American female mother and wife who lives in the city of South Fulton, to say, if I wanted to buy a house here, I would prefer to buy another house over $1 million or plus more somewhere else, because they have the amenities, the white tablecloths. They have all of the amenities that I need, and I don't have to leave. We don't have that here in South Fulton. How can we assure that we can begin to have smart development here? We want the density, but we want it to be smart. And I don't mind the apartments. I get it, it's apartments everywhere. But how do we strategically plan to put things in place so that it makes sense for our neighborhood? And we don't have to backtrack and correct the infrastructure that we already know is a mess, but yet we're building another apartment complex right in the middle of it. And after you answer those questions, I'll have Mr. Snellings answer his question.
Well, thank you for that question. Well, let me first say to you, Ms. Yoshina, we graduated from churches. We now have a Chick-fil-A. We have a Popeyes. We have a Chick-fil-A coming to our community. And the community, well, some of the elected officials are all excited about it. Well, you know why we're excited about a Chick-fil-A coming? Because we are starved for the caliber and quality of economic development that we deserve. We got to do better. Now, there are some things that we have to do, because some of the Fortune 500, Fortune 100 and 200 companies, they want to go to communities to set up shop that have a history of being safe, that has excellent educational system. Now, I'm not talking about the Fortune 500, 100, 200 companies to move their warehouses here. I'm talking about their corporate execs. They want to make sure that, those things are in place. So we have work to do, but those are the kinds of conversations we got to have, because you're right. We need to, I'm a student of the word, okay? We need to write the vision and we need to make it plain, okay? So that those who come behind us can run this race. But where there's no vision, the people perish. We need to make sure everybody knows the vision. Now, I understand that there has been some work that's done, but have you seen it? Most people haven't seen it. It should be emblazoned on a big banner behind the city council at every city council meeting. And we should point to it and speak to that mountain. We'll get there. So people will be able to see the vision. They will understand the vision. They can get behind the vision, but you can't get behind what you don't know about. But we have to have smart economic development. That's where we got to have a strong, comprehensive land use plan that's in place, that's not customarily and normally violated with stuff that doesn't meet the land use plan. We've got to be very clear about what we want where. Not everything can go anywhere. You can't put a hospital in the middle of Welcome All community. It doesn't fit. It probably won't fit on Old National Highway, but it will fit somewhere. We need some Class A office buildings. It won't fit in the middle of Welcome All community, but it'll fit somewhere. That's why I take a global approach, and I'm going to work very closely with my colleagues on council so that we can be very smart and strategic about what we need based upon what the citizens say they want. And I heard you, white linen tablecloth restaurants, because we got Ruby Tuesday and TGI Fridays, and we got Olive Garden up at Camp Creek, but that's in East Point. What do we have? What do we have in the city of South Fulton? We only have one bank in all of this city that's serving over 100,000 people. That's why I said earlier, though I'm very proud of this city, I think that there's a tremendous upside, but we got work to do. But we have to have the right leaders in place that's going to be a magnet for development and opportunities rather than deterrence.
Absolutely. Mrs. Snelling?
Thank you, Keith. All right, so for the last 2 years, this forensic audit keeps coming up. What are your thoughts on the forensic audit? Do you support having a forensic audit? And do you think we actually need a forensic audit when and what departments would you suggest we look into?
Well, listen, I always take a global approach, and I will take a global approach to District 3. We need to have yes, I support a forensic audit. I will not cherry pick which department. We need to have a forensic audit from top to bottom for all activities that have occurred in District 3. Now, here's why I believe that. If we worked in a fast food restaurant or in a grocery store, when you have one person working in this cash register and another person is about to come on and take on a different shift, they have a full accounting of that cash drawer before they change hands. So before I take over and take on, all of this stuff that's going on, I want to make sure everything's accounted for. People need to know where they left off and where we picked up, what the conditions were when I came in, so that accountability can be assigned to the person who should be accountable. And I will be fully accountable for my actions and the things that happen on my watch. That's why forensic audits are important to have. And everybody, no one should be adverse to that. If we can have a community vet and pay $65,000 of taxpayer dollars to have a Latin party, we can certainly spend the money appropriately to be accountable for the tax dollars. $200 million budget. Yeah, we need to do a forensic audit, and we need to do it yesterday.
Brian?
Yes, Mr. Crane, I want to start my question off first with a comment. I think you're as smooth as silk, number one. And secondly, I appreciate your references to God, including a Bible verse quote. So thank you for that. My question is, if you're elected, fast forward to January, what are the top 3 things that you plan to do in your role as a city council person for District 3?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. You know, I'm a professional, and I started in this profession that I'm in a long, long time ago. And I know that in order for me to be successful, I had to be able to communicate on every level, no matter whether you're from Bankhead or Buckhead, Alpharetta or Palmetto, didn't matter. I need to meet people where they are. And we have that type of diversity in this city. But to your question, what will be the first thing I want to do? I want to start the conversation with my colleagues about ethics reform. To me, that's one of the most important things in healing this land. There has to be a level of decorum. Let me remind you guys of this. In March of this year, we adopted City of Civility standards. And I think that was officially recognized, I think around May or June. But a City of Civility, to me, represents that we're going to behave in a civil and humane way with proper decorum and professionalism. We have been everything but a city of civility. So I want to start the conversations very, very clearly, very, very early about we need to do this. So obviously for me, those conversations have started, but I want to start that process because the more we delay that process, the longer it's going to take for a sense of decorum and civility to come back. You know, in some levels of government, they refer to each other as Mr. Mr. President, Mr. Ron, or the gentleman from the 3rd district. They all would have to be suited and booted because it creates an environment of professionalism and civility. I don't know how far I can go with this, but there are enough examples out there of where people were creative to create an atmosphere where civility, decorum, professionalism, and honor can be fostered. That's where I want to start. Now, mind you, there's a lot of work to do, but you can't do number 2 until you do number 1. I want this to be a community where ethics and decorum are at the top of our agenda.
Absolutely, thank you. Do we have anyone else? I thought I saw someone typing in the chat. Now, let me ask you this. We've asked every candidate, what are your thoughts on the P card? Should everyone have one? How should it be used? Should the budget be lower than what it is? I think it's about, last we heard, 65,000 on a P card. What's your opinion?
Well, my opinion on P cards, let me tell you something. P cards have been the passport to prison for too many people. And I don't think that we're going to be able to avoid that much longer. It's under investigation now, and we need to fix it. Now, insofar as P cards, practical use, there are some practical uses for P cards. But when you have people who have not managed those things properly, we need to be swift to fix that. How do you fix it? Well, if it had been illegal, then we've filed the proper, go through the proper process to get people prosecuted. If someone were to go in my wallet without my consent and grab one of my credit cards and use it improperly, we know what the consequences of that would be. If we know who did it, they will catch a case, as we say it back in the hood. This is no different. People should catch a case. And if I handled it inappropriately, I too should catch a case if I can't justify the spending. Now, if we need some bathroom tissue or some ink pens or stuff like that in my office, if that's an appropriate use of the P card, I shouldn't have to go to the city council for approval to get that, disbursement. That should be proper use of it, but there should be swift consequences for mismanagement of it. And that's just another example where people are operating willy-nilly because they know there have been no consequences for anybody's actions. Well, they better, go to the Google machine and check out consequences that others have gotten in other places. Um, beware. It's going to catch up with those who have violated, their fiduciary responsibility in managing that. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely. All right. And your first, well, let's just say you do take the seat. You win this election. Who would you hire to come in as staff? Because as we all know, council, you do your part, but the bigger part is your team, who you hire behind you. Who would you hire and what would their occupation be and why?
Well, I would hire the most qualified, capable person that I know. I won't call names today. I definitely don't want to, air that out at this point, but you can bet this, it won't be a patronage tree just because somebody made a campaign contribution and don't bring the body of work, because my results are going to be in large part predicated on those around me, just like you said. So I'm going to bring people around who have, a pretty substantial body of work to illustrate. We call them these days receipts for their body of work. If you have a good body of work, you've been a person of character and integrity, then you could be a candidate. Now, that does not preclude those who may have made contributions to me, but you can't make a contribution and be scandalous and hope that you're going to, be on my team. It doesn't work like that. It's all about character, integrity, decorum, honesty, and professionalism. Whoever those people may be, hey, come and knock on my door. I'm open to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Now we have a question in the chat from Lorraine's iPhone. It says, to piggyback off of Mr. Run's question, if elected city councilman for District 3, what would be your first 100 days in office for District 3? What would that look like?
Good question. Number one, beyond the ethics thing, here's some things I want to accomplish. I want to identify the 10 most blighted properties in the district. And we need to set out on a course to get those 10 things done. I'm not going to try to fix all of the world's problems in 100 days, but I think it's fair and reasonable to say we're going to start to attack the top 10. That's going to be one of the key things. I'm not naming these things in any particular order, but these are some of the things that I want to prioritize. That's one of them. The other is, in order to spur economic development in the greater Welcome part of the district, and it's kind of the tale of two districts within one. You got the greater Welcome and you got Cliftondale down South Woodland Parkway to Stonewall Tail down in that area. But in the greater Welcome area, if you're familiar with the area from Washington Road and Roosevelt Highway, all the way down to Welcome Road at Washington Road, it's a 2-lane state highway. It's going to be almost impossible to spur economic development in that corridor with a 2-lane road. Nobody wants to go up there. We need to widen that. And let me tell you what I believe the outcome would be. You know the kind of development that happens up in the College Park part of Roosevelt Highway? You got GICC, Georgia International Convention Center. You have a sports arena, you have hotels, you have infrastructure that can be accommodated. And let me tell you something, it's almost like you go to a new city when you go up to that part. Oops, it is another city, but it should be seamless in going from College Park in that area down to Welcome where you have Wayfield. We've got to do better. So that's one thing that I want to fix. We need, and let me say this on that point. In talking to DOT, they said no one has ever come to them about widening that street. And in order for DOT to act upon that, DOT said, well, no state rep or state senator has come to them to ask them for that. Well, I've had the conversation with the state reps. I've had that. So that will be something that I work on. So 2 things. We'll identify the blighted community, the blighted properties, and we'll address that. And we'll work on being aggressive about getting Highway 29 widened so that we can have a runway for economic growth and development that's going to carry us far out into the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ron, did you have another question? Sorry.
I do. And Mr. Crane, I also want to start again with a compliment. I appreciate your answers. They're right on point, and hopefully you'll continue to do so. And I want to let everyone also know that's listening that Yoshina and I don't like asking all the questions. This is for you too. So please feel free to reach out and just ask your candidate for District 3 what you want. You see, he's going to give you an honest, open response.
Yeah,
So,
we're quarter till, so we're in good time.
okay, well, that's great. So, Mr. Crane, there's a lot going on in the city of South Fulton with respect to the police department. And I'm wondering what your relationship will be with Chief Meadows and anything that needs to be cleaned up or addressed in the police department. Can you tell us your thoughts on those types of things?
Yeah, I will. Thank you for that. Well, listen, my relationship with Chief Meadows will be professional. It'll be cordial, but my greater responsibility and relationship is going to be between me and the city manager. City manager reports to the city council. The police chief reports to the city manager. See, too often you got city elected officials trying to run departments. Bennie Crane won't be running a police department. I will not run Chief Meadows and give him marching orders and instructions. It won't happen on my watch. You know, it's even been reported widely that, you know, we have city council people who show up at crime scenes and tell the police how to do their job. How do I know that? Because the police tell me that. They told me that. So I won't be doing that. So the straight answer to your question, what will my relationship be with Chief Meadows? Professional and civil. That's going to be the extent of it. You know, I don't give him, you know, I might want to have, you know, him give me some information, but I will go through the proper protocol. I will ask the city manager, can you arrange for me to get this information? Can we meet, all meet? But, you know, no, I will not be giving Chief Meadows any marching orders. That's not my job. I'm a policymaker, not a super police chief. Nope, not my role.
Thank you for that question. We have a question from Brian's iPad.
Hello, Mr. Crane. After listening to you last week at the debate and again tonight, I'm definitely have made my mind up that I'm definitely looking for change because I do reside on Janice Drive off of Roosevelt Highway. And I love what I'm hearing from you. So I'm gonna put it on out there. I don't care who knows, but I will go in your direction as far as with my votes from my home. And I'm proud that we live in a city that is predominantly, well, led by Black people, even though I know it's, you know, a mixed city. But at times, the leadership has almost been, I'll say, ghetto to an extent. So a person like yourself, and I know you're, like you say, a businessman and you know, successful business in the insurance industry, I'm sure. But we definitely would like a person like yourself, hopefully will carry over to the rest of the, hopefully new city council people when after the November 7th election.
Well, thank you for that. And listen, I'm fully committed to making sure that you don't regret your decision to support me. Like I said earlier, get me in, I make you proud. But let me say this regarding, you know, my effect on others who would be my colleagues on council. I have the full support of several council people. Now, they're not coming out publicly, but you have to trust me on this one because I'm trustworthy. I have several of their support, and I'm honored to have it. And I look forward to working with all of them. Again, it doesn't matter whether you support me or don't support me. Once on council, we're all together, and I'll have civil conversation. There'll be no retribution from me because you didn't support me. Won't happen. So we're going to hopefully bring a lot of people on. Let me tell you, most of the people on council are not like what I'm talking about here, where we have an absence of decorum. Most of them are not like that. We have a couple outliers, but you know, elections have consequences. Change is coming. Wait till November the 7th. Change is coming, and you're going to see the kinds of behaviors that will keep us off the news for all the wrong reasons. and the kind of thing that will make us very proud to call South Fulton home.
Thank you. And I'll lead before I ask my next question, just with a couple of comments and just listening to you. We do need change. And I do see so much development. I'm not going to say it's all the wrong development, but I want to make sure that we get on the right track. Do you foresee, if you were to take the seat, to have more apartment complexes coming? Again, I don't have a problem with apartment. Not everyone wants to live in a single family or a townhome. However, how do we keep the apartments that we do bring in the neighborhood up to at least market rate or higher, to make sure that we bring in those professionals to come and live in our neighborhoods? And then also too, when we have the neighborhoods or the apartments that come in, are we thinking about building new schools? The schools are becoming more crowded. Anytime you have development that's coming in, and just like you mentioned, and I could see that with studies, I've studied that in school, when you talk about a Trader Joe's that we all want, or Sprouts or Whole Foods and those types of brands, they do a study. They study the neighborhoods, they study the areas, and and you just mentioned it, the number 2 things that they look for is the income, and then they look at the education.
Yeah.
If we're not matching either of those, we can't bring it into our area. And I look at how Noonan has grown, Peachtree City has grown. We talk about so many different cities that African Americans, when we say they did it, they thought about them, or, they did. They were exclusive to them. And I think sometimes we're so inclusive. We want to include everybody. But how do we make our neighborhoods exclusive to make sure that we keep the values and we hold the values that we know? Where we live right now is such a prestigious area, and the location is unmatched. There's no way our home should not be $1 billion. There's no way we shouldn't have the development here that we need. But we've got to get those two. People buy houses for education and knowing that they can make the money that they need to make to sustain their household. Now, we do have a question in the chat. Instead of me asking my question, I'll ask the one in the chat. Do you have any feedback from my comment I just made?
I do. Thank you very much for that. Listen, we know for many decades, developers from around the world, Fortune 100, 200, 100 companies, got off an airplane at the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, got in a limousine, and they went north because they were directed to go north as a potential place to do business. They were deliberately steered away from South Fulton, and they went north. But they've pretty much built out, but they are still building it out, but it's forcing more development further and further and further north. That's why Cummings, Forsyth County, is now a booming community because they keep creating development. But here's the thing that we have to do. We have to be very, very wise about what we do. We live in the shadow of the world's busiest airport, period. And until recently, well, perhaps never before in the history of all mankind, have we not had economic boom around a major airport, except this one. Why is economic boom not happening around this airport? Well, it was strategic, but we got to fix that. We got to create the kind of environment that will foster the kinds of opportunities that we want to have. We're worth it, we deserve it, but we just got to make sure we create the best opportunity for the best brands to come to our city. We got to fix the education, we got to fix the crime and rooftops. Let me talk about the hotel, not hotels, but the apartments. Apartments, you want to say something? I'm sorry. I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
I said we have 6 minutes, and I want to make sure you get your 5 minutes at the end as well.
Okay.
I'm going to let you comment back in with the apartments. Let me get this last question from one of the residents. It looks like he is a resident of District 3, and he said, we're having an erosion problem on our property. The problem is so bad that our square footage with each rainfall continues to, I guess, eat away from their property, the city nor the county will take responsibility for the creek and maintenance. It's not a retention pond in the area. It is actually a creek. They were not in the buildings. It looks like pond. There's a retention pond behind them in the area that was not built to code. Can you see yourself helping the citizens of Green Tree Trail? Oh, okay, Green Tree Trail, that's off of Fairburn, to protect their land? It's been very frustrating.
Yeah, Champions Park, that's where that is, right off of,
Okay.
I know, listen, there's a problem over there that nobody want to take responsibility for. Now, listen, the original developer, Champions Park, is probably long gone. So there's a new sheriff in town. We got to have a collaborative conversation, relationship. That's why I said we've got to lead. We got to find common ground through diplomacy. Not only is that happening where earthen dam broke in Champions Park, we got erosion problems where having landslides in one subdivision not far from Champions Park, but no one wants to take it on. Our community deserves better. Now, a phrase that people may get tired of me saying, but I'm going to say it again at that risk. If we can't get these things fixed and addressed, it won't be for my lack of effort. I'm a partner with you. I know what's going on. I've been here a long time. I care about this community. I care about this city. And District 3 is not the only place that has erosion problems and mudslide problems. I want to work with my council members so that we can address these things. Fulton County has taken a hands-off approach. They don't want to fix it, but let's take it on together. We got some work ahead of us to do. And together, we're going to have some wins. Everything that happens won't be a swing and a miss. We're going to hit some singles, we're going to hit some doubles, we're going to hit some triples, and we're going to hit some grand slams. Together, we can do that.
Absolutely. Ron, I'm gonna let you come in. If you don't mind, Mr. Crane, before you step off, I'll see if I can connect you with the person who was on there about the retention pond in their yard. I don't know if they want further explanation. We don't want to rush you, but we want to make sure we end on time.
Sure.
Exactly. And thank you, Yoshina. I did get an anonymous question sent to me, so I'm just going to read it, and hopefully you can just do a 1-minute response. A resident contacted Councilwoman Willis regarding a concern he had over the handling of his case by our police department. He was told that she doesn't handle police matters and not to contact her again. When disputes arise between residents and the police and you are contacted, how would you handle this matter?
Well, listen, I would do what I always do. I will channel it to the right people for them to handle it. Now, I would never tell someone that, I don't do that, get away. No. I know who's supposed to be handling what. I can't, again, dictate to the police how to do things, but if there's a message I need to get to the police chief or to whatever department, the city manager is there. She works for the city council. She, in one vernacular, she carries our water. And she's doing a great job. Unfortunately, she's only with us for another 2 years. Hopefully, we'll be able to woo her to stay. But the right answer is, let me fix that. Let me see what I can do to assist in fixing these problems. The problems are many, but we have to approach them. And what I would do, I will handle these people with professionalism and civility. They will not have to walk away feeling like they have imposed on me for all the wrong reasons. I'm here for you. That's why I'm running in this race, because we need change for someone who cares about the community more than they care about themselves.
Absolutely. And we're not going to just limit you. We're going to give you your time like we've given every candidate. We just ask that everyone, if you don't mind, we will go over on time, probably about 5 minutes. We're going to allow Mr. Crane to please give his closing remarks, and then we'll cut the recording off then, if that's okay.
Thank you so much, guys. Ron and Yoshina, listen, I've attended a number of these. This is perhaps the most thoughtful one that I've attended. I appreciate you taking the time. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't. But you guys are the epitome of what I'm fighting for. Top level, top shelf stuff. and to the citizens of the city of South Fulton. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in. I'm running because I care about this city. I'm running because I care about this district. But I believe, like many of you believe, we deserve a different representative. We need new leadership. And I believe if we're successful on November the 7th, you're going to see the kind of leadership and outcomes that we all want. So here's what I ask. If you are interested in change, and if you're interested in that change starting here with this candidate, reach out to me. Call me at 404-317-7283, or go to my website. It's simply benniecrane.com. It's going to take a lot to overcome the I beside a person's name on the ballot. I need your help. I cannot do it alone. So benniecrane.com. But as important as that, early voting starts on October the 16th, and the election day is November the 7th. I need you to all take ownership of 25 people, that you'll make a notepad, write those people names and phone numbers, call them, and remind them all the way through to the 7th of November to get them to the poll. We have to mobilize and make this a movement, because if we don't do something different, we're going to get more of what we've been getting, something that nobody wants. In conclusion, I'm Bennie Crane. I want to be your next city councilman. We got a lot of heavy lifting to do, but everybody knows that it takes a crane to lift a heavy load. And my name is Bennie Crane, and I want to be your next city councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. And we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. Can you hang on for us if you don't mind?
I can.
And thank you everyone for participating. And regardless of who you vote for, please vote. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.